I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
you
you're
have
not
given us
telling
no
us, you're not
instructions.
Once again, the morning comes, a brand new day, the same old sun. I'm drinking in the air of dawn. The city shines and sings her song.
haven't shown up. It's the beginning of the year. We're not worried. In fact, I'm excited because the Lord has placed on all of our hearts collectively to kind of go back to the root of what we were doing in the first place. And this is the root of what we were doing. The only person that I think was here for that was you, Michael. Josh, did you come to Alpha? Or no? One day or so. Yeah. So basically, we're going to change some things up in the best possible way. As we progress throughout the year, it's going to look differently. Things are going to change. But for right now, I'm totally confident doing it this way. I'm comfortable doing it this way. It's kind of more close and more brought together. In fact, the only reason I have a mic on right now is because we have people who are watching online that can't be here, or people who watch later on, which is really beneficial because they get to, be a part of it afterwards. So I've got a couple of housekeeping announcements for those of you who weren't here last week, which is not very many of you, but from now on, because of, we want to be able to continue to do what we're doing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do one free drink and one free bag of chips for everybody. And then after that, if you want some more, they're pretty cheap. It's $1 for a pop, 75 cents for chips. Like, not too bad at all. I think that's pretty good. The other thing that I'm actually really excited about is the fact that we are going to be, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're passing out these little things, so whenever you need a free chip or a free pop, just go to whoever's running the snack table, give it to them, and then they'll just swap it out. They'll keep it, whatever, and then it'll be good. So, for those of you who don't know, who don't have Instagram, we decided to have what did we call it? A meme-a-thon? A meme competition. Yeah. Yeah, Michaela sent like a ton, so, yeah. They were. Some of them were really, really good. But we had a meme competition basically where whoever won got a DQ gift card. We're going to do this once a month. So, get consent, and it's got to be Sentyouth related memes. That's the whole point, because those are the funniest. When it's like a Christian meme, it's still funny, but it's not quite as funny as just hammering the point that Ewan does not stop talking about his car. Like, that's a really fun one. Or like the fact that I constantly, without ending, show pictures of my dog to people who in no way ask to see pictures of my dog. It doesn't stop. I didn't think that I was going to be that person. I really did not think that. Yeah, Michaela knew. She knows me. I didn't think I was going to be that person. I was like, I am going to get a dog. That's going to be nice. Have a little furry friend. Whatever. No. I'm like, she grew 3 centimeters. Look at the 3 centimeters she grew. Like, that is 100% me. It drives everyone I know crazy. I'm like, you guys got to know her weight update. Everyone's like, we don't care about your dog. So the memes that were sent that were regarding the fact that I don't stop talking about my dog were great. So I love the Sentyouth ones because they're kind of close to home, and the whole family here can kind of relate to that and laugh at us because we're all goofballs. But we had a meme competition, and we had probably 25 submissions. 24 were Michaela. No, Mickey literally sent probably like... She sent probably like 9, and like so many of them and she sent some in private to me where she was like, I'm not sending this to anyone else. For those of you who are watching online, Michaela is my sister, so that's totally normal. So she was sending these private memes to me where she was like, I'm not sending this to the group chat because they were really mean to me. Like, they were like, she knows exactly where the spots to just like punch me are. Like the spots that I'm like, yeah, that's so funny. But on the inside, I'm like, I'm hurting really bad. So she sent a bunch. But anyway, so we have some winners. I'm really excited to get this started. We have 3 DQ gift cards because we couldn't just pick one. They were all too good. So we've got a first place, a second place, and a third place. And if you want to pull those up now, you can. Somebody wants to get a camera shot of the screen there. So we got Michaela. Even tonight. So I announced this on Thursday, and like 4 people came to send last week. And so we were like we're coming off of this high of like the summer camp of like 35 people, and then 4 people show up to send, and Michaela has the nerve, one day removed from that, to send me this meme that literally says, Joash, after only 4 people showed up on Wednesday, and it's like, in Toy Story 3, when Woody like looks at Buzz and he's like, after all we've been through, it was like that, and it like hurt, it cut me to the core, but it was too funny not to share. So Michaela, you are number 1. Not the song, don't worry about it. Now number 2 is Nathan, because for those of you who were at the retreat, you know that the running joke was how Ewan's purity message was just absolutely destroying lives on a consistent basis. And so Nathan goes in and he finds Ewan and Rachel's engagement photos, and he crops out Rachel, and he just puts this giant purity. And the reason I picked it isn't even just, there's one major reason. Because it's an actual engagement photo, the smile on Ewan's face is so genuine, and just like, he's in love. And then here's just this giant orange purity holding his hand, and Ewan's just staring off into the water like, I am in pure bliss right now. And so that's to Nathan. Unfortunately, he's not here, but we will get it to him. He's working like a trader, making money. Anyway, because I know he's going to watch this later. And number 3, Michael took me off guard with this one. Okay, and I got to give some background. Michael was sending a couple of memes, and they were funny, and I was laughing. And then he, out of nowhere, throws in this gut punch of a meme. Because so Ewan, for those of you who don't know, Ewan was never a car nerd, ever in his life. Him and I used to make fun of car nerds, like all the time. We would mock car nerds and be like, oh, look at them laughing at their cars, it's just a car. And then all of a sudden, out of the wild blue nowhere, Ewan's just like, I love cars. And so he buys this, 2009? 2007 Hyundai Sonata. And he is so obsessed with it, like he blacked out the tail lights, like he did like a whole paint job on the, like he just hasn't stopped talking about it. And so Michael and Nathan are huge actual car nerds. Like they could tell you like the parts of an engine. Anyway, moving on. And so he just didn't stop talking about it to them at the entire summer camp. And so Michael's like, I'll read it because it's hard to see. It's like how Ewan expects us to react to his car, and it's like, it's beautiful. I've been staring at this for the last 5 hours. Because it's like, Ewan just brings up the idea of his car, and this expectation arises in his heart where all of humanity needs to stop what they're doing and exist in the glory of Ewan's car. And so I want to do this every single month because these are really funny, and honestly, it's kind of fun to make fun of each other, and there's a lot to make fun of. So, Mike, that was you. $5 goes to you, buddy. Awesome. So, yeah, you guys, if you're not in the Instagram group chat, you can send me memes individually. But, yeah, we're going to make this into a monthly Sentyouth meme competition, and it's going to be sick. A couple other announcements. Like I already talked about, the drinks and stuff, we're going to do those, but that's going to all be after. Ewan, here's what I want you to do. Okay? I want you to go up there and I want you to get that microphone. Run up, quick boy. And here's what I want you to do. Okay? I want you to give me... You look ready.
I'm ready. What's up?
You look ready.
Yeah.
Ready? Do you know what I'm going to ask
No,
you?
I actually have no idea what you're going to ask me whatsoever.
I didn't know what I was going to ask you.
No,
About 30 seconds
that's
ago.
good.
Yeah. So...
Do I drive my car in here?
You need to go get your car.
I'll drive it through the doors
and you
right there.
Drive it through the door.
Yeah.
And we all need to remember with Israel and the golden calf.
Yeah.
And how Moses goes up on the mountain and they come down.
I love idol worship.
That is him, but with a Hyundai Sonata.
That's right.
No, but in all seriousness, here's what I want to talk about. Okay. I want it to kind of be more of an open dialogue tonight because there's not a lot of us. I want us to be able to actually converse. Be able to be having a conversation with us. But tonight, I am feeling to talk. Oh, Michaela is gambling. For those of you who didn't see, just dropped a poker chip out of nowhere. She is ready for a full game of $1 million Texas Hold'em. Anyway, so what I want to talk about with everybody tonight is resting.
Yeah.
I want to talk about resting.
Yeah, it's a good topic.
And I want you to quickly share just what your little experience really quickly with what resting has looked like in your life and struggles you've had with it, and then we can kind of get into it because I want to hear from my pal here.
Right. Am I going to be here the whole entire time?
No, you can leave.
Oh,
out,
that's
like,
good.
for-
Hallelujah.
you're good
Amen.
after that,
I hate talking.
It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah. Well, resting for me, of course, there's two different kinds. There's the resting on Saturday night on the weekend, and I just got back from doing something absolutely stupid or work, and I'm like, finally, I can play 17 hours of Destiny 2, and then realize why did I play this game, because this game is absolutely awful. That's one kind of rest for me. Now, is it good kind of rest? Absolutely not. It kind of sucks. And then I end off the night, and I'm just like, why did I do that? I hate this so much. But there's a second kind of rest that, in my experience, has been something that has kind of changed my life and has changed people's lives that have actually experienced it before. And that's the rest of God, being in His rest. I remember there was a long time ago. Some of you guys probably have heard the story, but I one night when I was an old friend, when I was probably about 16 or 17, and I took a little bit of the devil's lettuce one night. And
Would you like to explain what the devil's lettuce is?
Yeah, no, I went out one night and I did some drugs when I was a little bit younger. And I remember it was just one little tiny thing, and that night I remember, I don't know what was in it, what ended up happening. In some semblance, I kind of understand what happened, but I remember we were driving down the road and everything was purple. I turned around to my friend and she was Bugs Bunny. Like, it was wild, man. Like, this stuff was like different level. But I remember that wasn't the whole point of rest. Obviously, that was the thing that made me unrestful. I was still learning about how to be close with Jesus, and after that experience, I remember I ending up in the hospital that night, and I was so anxious, I was so stressed. I didn't actually have any idea what I was doing. This is a really extreme example, but, I remember just that the months following, I ended up kind of going into a little bit of a depression and some anxiety, and in that time, I felt so far away from God. I felt so distant from Him, and a lot of us have been there where it's just like there's this distance and there's this kind of like, man, God, I remember there was those times when I was really just with you. For a lot of us, it was like when I was just close to you on the youth retreat, that one time when I was younger and I just experienced who you were and are, and man, like, now I'm just not feeling it. And that was me in that moment. That was me, and like I was not able to actually come to rest with Him because I was still freaking out about what ended up happening on those nights. And in that time, I remember there was a night I kind of came back. I was coming back home. I was just driving back from my day job, and there was just this sense of God in the car with me that night. And I like to do this thing where I pretend that God's in the passenger seat with me. So I kind of looked over to Him and I said, God, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this anxiety that I'm going through. And it was in that moment that I started to remember what God's rest felt like. And it wasn't the rest of going and sitting down on the couch and playing video games for 7 hours and like mind-numbing myself. But it was this peace that there's a God that's bigger than me. And there's somebody who knows my future, who knows my past, knows whatever I'm going to do with my life. And that was it. I just knew, and there was this peace that came over, and for the first time in months, I was able to rest. And I always hold on to that experience of just rest, being able to be in His presence. And that's what Joash is going to talk about tonight, just being able to rest in God's presence and rest in just who He is. And yeah, just not the mind-numbing couch rest, like the actual God, I love you and I know you, that kind of rest. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.
And the reason I got him to share that was basically because I'm actually going to move this. I don't need it anymore. The reason I got him to share that was because, I am not one to talk about COVID. I'm not one to speak on it. I'm not one to give it an audience that it doesn't need. I am much more in favor of speaking about joyful things and hopeful things, and I don't want to dwell on those things. However, it's not missed on me the fact that the last 2 years have been absolutely insane. Like, we thought we were going to do Youth Week 1. We finally got together and had a youth retreat, and literally a COVID outbreak happened at the youth retreat. Like, so there's COVID, there is, the world that we live in right now. I mean, okay, let me ask you guys this genuinely. Who notices a lot of division right now in the world? Who notices a lot of dividing opinions, and who notices the fact that for some reason, all of a sudden opinions now determine whether or not we can actually be friends with somebody, or we can actually talk to people, or you wouldn't mind just turning the music off for a second? Yeah, so we're in a time right now where rest is not only a foreign idea, but it's a super misunderstood idea. And it's something that when we think of okay, let me just ask around, and I think the mics will pick this up. Who wants to give me an example when they hear the word rest? What do they think of? Like, what's the first thing that pops in their head? Sleep. Who else? Watching a movie. Who else? Come on, guys. Reading a book. There are literally 7 of us here. we can just open up. Those are some good ones. Who else has got one? Give me a random one. Someone that isn't named Julianne. Saturdays. That's actually a very good example. Who else? Quiet. Yes. Who else? Sitting on the couch playing video games. Yeah, those are all good ones. But the problem is when we think of that as rest, we're actually missing what rest is. It's a pretty common topic to talk about in youth groups and churches, but the reason I want to talk about it is because there's 2 kinds of rest that we can live in. There is regular, like, worldly rest, where, like, it's the sleeping, it's watching movies, it's relaxing, it's getting home from work and crashing, it's whatever else. But what God has for us, what Jesus has paved the way for, is actually a rest that doesn't stop. It doesn't end. It's not something that happens at the end of a day where you can relax from the workday. It's not something that happens after you've had a long Sentyouth summer camp weekend and all you want to do is nap for 6 straight days. The rest that God actually is wanting to let us have and show us how to use and live in is a rest that while we're in those times, while we're at work, while we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, while we're doing the things that are tiring, while we're doing the Sentyouth retreats, while we're studying for our tests, all of these things, while we're doing them at rest. And so I think in order for us to talk about that, we actually have to define what rest is from our perspective versus God's perspective. So our perspective of rest is it's a break, right? Even in music, we talk about rests. It's like, anyway, moving on. It's like the tappy thing, and it's like, yeah, ta, and then it's like rest, yes. And we think that a rest is a break, okay? But, thank you, Embry. You're the real MVP. I wish I had a DQ gift card for you. One of the other memes was like, I showed a picture of Vision from Marvel, and he was wearing like a turtleneck, and he was like looking all fly, and it was like the youth leaders walking around with 150 DQ gift cards in their pockets at the youth retreat. Anyway, but what rest basically is to us is a break. It's when we go from doing something to not doing anything. But what rest is for God is something that doesn't stop. It doesn't end. And what that means is we can actually do things while being at rest. And God's definition of rest, whereas ours is a break, God's definition of rest is actually more along the lines of confidence and peace, where it doesn't matter what your circumstance is, it doesn't matter what's going on around you, you're confident in who He is, You're confident in his ability to work through you and in the situation. And in that, you can rest in him, knowing that no matter what's happening in your circumstance, that he works all things together for the good of those who love him. And so what I want to really get into tonight is I have a couple examples actually written down from my own life that I want to talk about. Let's see here. Actually, you know what? I'll read a little scripture first. It's in Hebrews 4. Okay, do you guys have it up there? Hebrews 4. You got it? Okay. Hebrews 4:1 says, God's promise of entering his rest still stands. His rest, not our rest, his rest. God's promise, which is God saying, I promise you that you can enter into my rest, still stands. So we ought to tremble with fear that some of you might fail to experience it. For this good news that God has prepared this rest has been announced to us just as it was to them, but it did them no good because they didn't share the faith of those who listen to God. Now jump down to verse 6, where it says, So God's rest is there for people to enter, but those who first heard this good news failed to enter because they disobeyed God. So God set another time for entering his rest, and that time is today. God announced this through David much later in the words already quoted. Today, when you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts. So Paul says something really interesting in that, at least we think it's Paul, it's Hebrews, so all the theologians can debate that in the comments. So Paul says something interesting. He says, we ought to be fearful and tremble that we don't fail to experience this rest. Now, what a lot of people think of when they see that is, I have to be afraid of God. But that's not what Paul's saying. He says that the rest of God is so great and the promise of it is so important in our lives that we need to be very, very cautious and careful that we don't miss out on that rest, that we don't exhaust ourselves, that we don't miss out on the promise of God's rest. And he actually says that the reason that some people have heard this message of God's rest, this gospel, this good news, but haven't experienced it, is because they didn't believe it. And so here's what I want to get into tonight just as a group, okay? Because what I feel God is doing in this youth group is something that we felt he was doing when we first founded this whole thing. And that is digging into the core of who we are as people and bringing out something which is the reality of who he is. And so a lot of us here have missed out on the first 2 years of Sent, or, were at there a couple times and didn't come, or whatever. So we're kind of at ground zero right now. And what God is wanting to do is he's wanted to reveal himself to us, to transform us, so that what he's starting can be firm when it grows. And so I want to talk about rest, and here's where I want to go with it. God's rest is rooted in one thing, knowing who he is. Okay? So let's shoot out some examples where rest is robbed from us. Okay? Who's got some? A circumstance in your life where you just weren't restful at all. You were uneasy, nervous, scared, anxious, whatever else it was. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be some super profound thing. Just any situation.
Working at Whispering Winds.
Ewan said working at Whispering Winds. It's a retirement home in town. Who else? Come on. You want to tell me that every single one of you lives perpetually rested? Is that what you're trying to tell me right now? I'll give you an example from my life, okay? And this is something that the Lord has done a lot of work in my life for. You can talk to Ewan, you can talk to Shay's got one. Do you have one, babe?
Yeah, I was just going to say, honestly, when I was going to high school, every single night before school, I'd be thinking, what am I going to wear tomorrow? What am I going to wear tomorrow? And I would just be like trying to picture what I was going to wear the next day.
Yeah, no, I didn't do that because I was not like that, but I understand the concept. I would always stress about what I was going to say to people. But for me, this was a big one in my life, and I don't know if you guys can relate to it. I have spent my entire life having a very difficult time giving up control of a situation. I've spent my entire life not only finding it difficult, but being afraid of situations that I don't control, or at least have some say in or some ability to impact. And I still struggle with that. When situations happen where literally there is absolutely nothing I can do to even remotely impact the situation, I start to panic and I start to get freaked out. Like in high school, I would always go super, if a lot of people were talking and I couldn't get my point across, instantly like my heart would start racing and my hands would start sweating, because in that moment I felt like I was out of control. The environment around me was completely out of my control. In situations where stuff was happening in my life that I knew about but was far enough away from me that I couldn't impact. Because for me, it was even to the point, if I could just do one little thing to impact it in the smallest, slightest way, it would give me some kind of relief. Now, the problem with that is that carried way over into my relationship with the Lord. Because the Lord requires us to take our hands off of situations and let him control the outcome and let him control the situation. And then, even that which we do in those circumstances is directed by him. And so I had the hardest time, actually, to be honest with you guys, the biggest reason I avoided, like I was a pastor's kid growing up, but the biggest reason that I stayed away from actually devoting my life to the Lord in a real sense, like I put on the fake mask on Sundays and on youth nights, and I'd be all, oh yeah, I'm the pastor's kid, I'm the Christian kid, but I never really meant it in my heart. And the reason was one of the biggest reasons was I was so afraid of control, of losing control, that I built up this idea in my mind that, and Shay can attest to this, we had this conversation early on in our actual relationship. I felt like God was a football coach on the sidelines, and he was watching me, and when I failed and I couldn't catch the ball or I failed to make the tackle, he kind of stood there, he didn't interact with me, he let me pick myself up and dust myself off, and I was content in that. I thought, that's my relationship with the Lord. And realizing now, that was actually rooted in my fear to let him influence the situation. I was afraid that if I took my hands off the steering wheel, it was going to crash. And honestly, it's only been this summer, even in the youth group, and you can ask Ewan and Rachel and Shay, where I felt confident taking my hands off the wheel in any aspect of it. And so I lived perpetually unrested, constantly in a position where I did not feel rested. I was stressed. I was anxious. Yeah, what's up, Jordan? Yeah, go for it. Jordan, you're not Jordan, you're Julian. I always felt unrested. I always felt scared. I always felt nervous, but I always felt exhausted because I tried to control every aspect of my life. And another example that I had written down was in our lives when we're comparing ourselves to other people or we're comparing ourselves to circumstances. What you guys might not know is when you are in ministry and you're running a youth group or a church or whatever, it is so unbelievably easy to get upset or nervous or worried or feel small by looking at other churches that have things that you don't, have more people than you, whatever else, doing things in a way that you wish you could do them. It's so easy to get caught up in that and get stressed out and be unrested because you don't feel at peace with where you are. And I know for you guys, just raise a hand if you want to, you don't have to, but in high school, it is so unbelievably easy to look at the lives of other people, especially, and I'm not going to use the cliche, you see their Instagram highlight reel, but in a sense, yeah. Because honestly, even though you might not see it online, the lives that you see at school that's the highlight reel. You don't see what's going on back home. How many of you guys, not even in school, but on movies or TV, whatever, have seen somebody else and you've compared your lives to them and you walked away feeling inadequate? Come on. You walk away feeling like I'm not lining up to that. I wish I could do that. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. That's one. Up in the booth, shout out. That's one that's hard because you walk away from it feeling not confident in yourself. You walk away feeling inadequate. You walk away feeling small. Another example is I don't need to list a million, but just things in our life that, here's a big one for me. I don't know if you guys can relate. In the same way that I never felt like I could let go of control, I constantly felt like I needed to do better. I never felt comfortable where I was. And I'm not saying that we don't try to do better. I'm not saying we don't strive to do our best. I'm not saying that we don't, try to do the absolute best we can. But what I'm saying is, I was never happy where I was. And even in my victories, I would never enjoy the moment because I would feel like it's still not good enough. If I went from having a 83 on a final to an 86 on a final, instead of enjoying the fact that I went up 3, my first thought when I saw the 86 was, it's not a 92. Or I would, even in video games, I would go and I would get I would get a kill streak that I'd never gotten before. And my first, which to me was like 4. Anyway, I would never be satisfied with that. I'd always want more. And again, it bled over into my walk with the Lord. Because he would bless me with things, and instead of enjoying them, I would always go, it's not good enough yet. It's not good enough yet. It's not good enough yet. And I'm not talking about greedy, materialistic things. I'm just talking in general. When I felt like I was growing in my walk with God, I was so unsatisfied with myself, and I was so insecure about myself that I couldn't enjoy the moment that I was having with him. I would be wanting more. And not in a good way. There's wanting more of him in a good way, where you're enjoying who he is, and you want more of it, and you're hungry for more of it. But there's a bad way in which you look at yourself and you go, you're experiencing God, and your first reaction is, this isn't good enough. There's got to be more to it than that. And the truth is, there isn't more to it than that. There's nothing better than him. And so if you're in his presence and you're asking yourself, there's got to be more to it than this, it's got to shift in your heart and your perspective. There's knowing him more, and that's a good thing. But like I said, I would get to the point where, even ask my wife, I would be at the peak of my relationship with the Lord, and instead of being happy in it, I would be insecure about it. And I would look at other people's lives and be like, well, I'm not where they are. I wish I was where they are. And that's only just started to stop for me in the last 6 months. And that's because God's shown me a lot on this topic of rest. And I'm not going to talk for too long tonight, I'm almost done, but what I want you guys to take away is this. Rest in God's kingdom is so dramatically different than what we think of when we think of rest. Because God's rest is confidence. It's peace. It's understanding of who he is. And so what started to happen for me, like Paul says, believe it. And what is it that he believes? He says, they didn't believe the good news. And what is the good news? Anybody know what the good news is? Anybody know what the word is in the Bible for good news? Anybody? What about you, Josh? Mr. My dad's a Greek major. Close. So the word, who here has heard the word the gospel? Gospel. Who's heard the word gospel? The word gospel means the good news. It means the good news. That's all it means. It means the good news. And so when Jesus actually said, go and proclaim the gospel, what he was saying was, go tell people this amazing news. And so when Paul says they heard the good news, but they didn't believe it, what he's saying is this. So here's Jesus, okay? Here's me in my situation. I don't want to take my hands off the wheel because I believe fully that if I take my hands off this wheel and somebody else is sitting in this driver's seat, there's no way they're going to be as good at it as me, as capable as me. They're not going to make the decisions that I'd make. I'm a horrible backseat driver, ask my wife. The whole time that somebody is doing something, my brain is asking the question, how would I do this? Okay? And so what I would do is I was scared to let go of the wheel and say, okay, Jesus, just do it. I don't want my life. It's yours. Do whatever you want with it. And I was scared because I couldn't see it. I couldn't wrap my mind around what that would look like. And because I couldn't wrap my mind around what that would look like, what I ended up doing was getting afraid of it, and I would hold on tighter and hold on tighter and hold on tighter. And every time he would say, it's going to be okay. I know where we need to go. Just let me drive. I want to go to, like, there. And currently, like he was literally like, okay, Joash, I want to drive this car to Seattle, and somehow you have wound up in the Saudi Arabian desert. I need to turn this car around because you are driving us into the middle of a sandpit. And I was like, this has to be the right way. I know it is. And every time he would ask, just let it go. Just let it go. And it was so peaceful, but I would hear it in such a way that made me anxious because I didn't know him well enough. And so what we need to do is we need to experience Jesus and learn who Jesus is. Because the way his rest comes is by believing in who he is. Because if I knew who he was, I would know he is going to drive this car better than I'm going to drive this car. And the destination he's taking me to is going to be far better than any destination I take myself. And the way we're going to get there is going to be the right way to get there, whereas I'm probably going to hit 42 detours, a couple potholes, lose a couple tires, have to probably call the rental car company and rent a car for the rest of the way. Whereas his way is going to get us there not only in one piece, it's going to get us there better than when we left. And a part of that comes from experiencing him. And here's what I want you guys to take away from that. Knowing him brings confidence, okay? So when you know him, you understand if I'm stressed for this test, yes, I'm not saying don't study. That's ludicrous. I would never say that. I didn't study, and that's why I was a bad student. But don't take my example. Study. It's not that I'm saying don't study. It's not that I'm saying don't care about your schoolwork. What I'm saying is when you start to get to know him, you realize you can rest in that moment because he has you. He's there for you. In the moments where you're sitting and you're comparing your life to somebody else, what knowing him does is bring rest. Why? Because he starts speaking over your life. And while you say, but I'm not as good as that person, he says, but this is how I see you. And he starts speaking confidence over your life. And he starts speaking life over you and love over you. And he says, Colton, stop looking at that person and saying, I'm not as good as them. I've made you to be who you are. I've given you the personality traits I've given you for a reason. I've given you the talents that you have for a reason. And I'm going to grow them. So stop looking at this person. And if you would just hear what I'm saying over your life, you would be confident in yourself to the point that I don't have to look at them because I believe in who God has made me to be. And what happens there is it stops being a comparison and starts being this, okay? So how many have done this? So you're looking at somebody, you're comparing your life to them, you don't feel adequate, so you have to start making up things in your mind to tear them down so that you feel better about yourself, right? What ends up happening is when God comes in and you start to know him and you start to hear him and he explains how he feels about you and how he sees you and what he's called you into, you then switch and are now not only confident in yourself, but instead of tearing other people down, you can celebrate their victories instead of getting jealous of them because you're confident in your own victories. And it's not a competition in the kingdom. Jesus left the 99 to find the one. That goes against logic. Logic says, I want to focus on the 99 and I'll send somebody else to find the one. Jesus says, you 99 stay here, I'm going to go to this one person. Numbers don't matter in his mind. Okay, so your victory might seem like this to you, but it's not. It's a victory that God gave you. And so when we can rest in that, we rest in the reality that, you know what, God? I'm grateful that you've done this for me. And because I'm grateful and I'm content and I'm confident in the fact that not only have you given me this win and not only have you spoken this over me, but I know that you're going to keep doing it. and I'm going to keep growing in you. So when we see other people's successes, we get excited for them instead of envious. In terms of control, when we start to know him, and here's what I would give to you. I am not asking you to take your hands completely off the wheel in one solid go. That is an unrealistic expectation. I didn't. I slowly started to, okay, Lord, I'm going to move my pinky off the wheel. You put your pinky there. Okay, Lord, you run the shifter. I've been redlining this whole time, so you take over. It's step by step, and what you start to see, and this is what I would say, start trusting God in the little things that you don't think matter. And watch as every time you put your life, any aspect of your life in his hands, watch him take control of it and watch it get better. Watch him transform it. Watch him prove to you that he's trustworthy, that he's faithful. He's not impatient. He is looking at each and every one of you and saying, I'm not scared that you're going to take a little time on this. It's called a walk for a reason. So if today you take your finger off the wheel and you let me, awesome. I'm going to show you that I love you enough to drive that one finger that you've let me use better than you've ever done in your life. And then the next day, what do? Lord, you've shown me your faithfulness in this, so I'm going to trust you with this. And eventually what happens is you stop not trusting him. Because you just go, you know what, Lord? Every single thing that I have put into your hands has worked. Everything that I've put in your hands has worked. It's a promise. I'm not giving you some, well, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. No. Every time you put your life, any aspect of your life, into the hands of Jesus, it works. And it works out. And it works better. And it works more amazing. And it's going to blow your mind. So I'm not telling you to immediately take all your hands off and just blindly go, okay, fine, because that's unrealistic. Start slow. Put your life in his hands, little by little. Start hearing him. When you start making comparisons to somebody else, say, Jesus, what are you saying about me? And then ask him this, what are you saying about them? Because then not only will you be confident in you, you'll be loving them. When you start to feel like this situation is out of control, you don't have any say in it, or I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I'm worried, whatever, just say, you know what, Jesus? I trust that you're going to make this work. What do I need to do? And then I'm going to trust you and watch as it works. So my point tonight is resting in God is knowing him, knowing that every situation he's ever touched has gotten better, knowing that every time he has done anything for you, it's proven to be faithful, knowing that every time you've called on his name, he has showed up, knowing that every time you've relinquished any control in your life to him, it's turned out better, knowing that he is in the middle of every situation you are in, so there is not a single time in your life, sure, we're going to screw up, sure, we're going to get stressed out, sure, we're going to take control of the wheel again, but it's a process of learning to rest in him, not in your circumstance. Man's rest is dependent on where you are. God's rest is independent of everything. It doesn't matter what your situation is, what your circumstance is, what your fear is, what your anxiety is. His rest lasts. And he gives you peace in the middle of every situation. So my challenge to you this week, and this is the end, and then we'll have fun, we'll hang out, we'll have some snacks. We might play some killer in here. We got the games room open, we got the basketball net outside. Like, we're going to have a blast. But this is what I would challenge you guys to do. Take a finger off the wheel. Put little things into his hands. If you want to go all out and just throw your hands up in the air and say, take the wheel, that's fantastic. That would be sick. But if that scares you, he's patient. And he's willing to walk with you and show you he's trustworthy. He is faithful. Read Psalms. the whole point of that book is David constantly reminding himself. There's one psalm in particular where he says, you've abandoned me. You don't know who I am. You don't even know how to be gracious. Do you even know what mercy means? Like, you don't even know my name. And then at the end of the psalm, he says, your mercy endures forever. It's because David looks back through his life. And what's going to happen as you start to give him these little things in your life, they're going to grow into bigger things and bigger things and bigger things and bigger things, because you can look back at everything you've put in his hands and have seen that it was trustworthy, he was faithful, and he did what he said he would do. So start this week. I want you all right now, close your eyes really quick. Just close your eyes. Everyone close your eyes. Picture the one thing in your mind that you struggle with the most, either you're most afraid of, either you're most nervous about, something you struggle with in terms of insecurity, confidence, whatever else. Picture that in your mind, and this week, make it your mission to give up that thing. Whether it's small or big, make it your mission this week to let God put his hands on that. Say, I'm not going to have control over this anymore, Lord. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. I'm going to trust in you. Even though it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be scary, but just do it anyway. And you know what? Here's the thing. If at the end of it all, Jesus, for some reason, proves unfaithful, I will empty my entire savings account and deposit it directly into your checking account. That's how confident I am, because he says, I am faithful. I'm faithful. Just so put it in his hands. So Father, bless everyone in this room tonight. I pray over each and every one that is sitting here. Every thought, everything that is in our minds right now that we're focusing on, that we're afraid of, that we're afraid to let go of, the things we struggle with. Give us a peace. Whisper to us so that we grow in confidence that you will handle it, and you'll handle it the best possible way. Teach us that you are faithful, you are trustworthy. Show us how to trust you in the small things so that we trust you in everything. Lord, if you want to move on us to let it all go at once, you do it. But I want you to show them, and I know you will, that you're faithful and you're patient, and you're not scared of their questions, and you're not scared of their worries, but that you'll walk with them every step until all of a sudden they realize that you've been driving the car for the last 1,000 miles, and it's been the best ride of their lives. So bless us as we go. Bring us closer together as a family, as a Sentyouth group. Most of all, grow us in a relationship with you. We thank you for all that you're doing in this youth group. We trust that it's going to continue to grow in whatever way that looks like we're okay with. We love you. We honor you. And we give you permission. In Jesus' name, amen. So guys, you guys have your tickets. You guys have your things. You want some pop? You want some chips? Go bring it to Madam Pop Chip Lady. That is Embry. Everybody wave to Embry. Everybody say hi to Embry. Hi, Embry. Awesome. Oh, go back to it. Okay, good. For you who are watching online at home, do the same thing. Trust him with it. Let him take control. It's going to be awesome. You unfortunately can't have our pop and chips because we can't send them like Willy Wonka does with chocolate through the TV yet. But as soon as we can, we will. Have a good night, everybody. We love you. Peace out.
have given us no instruction.